The last video I did was on the question of wheelchair racing in the hospital. And afterwards, I thought I could also just talk about wheelchairs in general, which got me into thinking about mobility and walking and falling and the rest of it and growing up. So I wanted to go back a little bit into, like, I first started to walk, I was 4 years old. They put together a bunch of various combinations of hip arrangement and ankle and feet arrangement so that I could stand up. And eventually I was at a point where I could walk without falling over. I could take a step and then another step, followed by a third step. And once I got to the fourth step, it was like, wow, you can walk without falling over. There's a photograph that if I figured out how to do it, might actually be able to put into this video. Of me standing up on a photographer's chair, desk, or place where I'm dressed up in a cute little suit. And it's me standing up all by myself, 4.5 years old. It's great. So that was a pretty big deal. So I was able to then eventually get myself around walking, but I was still falling all the time because I would just, the configurations were never quite right. And I think a lot of the reason I was falling a lot was that the braces were getting bunged up all the time. And because the braces were getting bunged up all the time, like the knee wouldn't bend, you'd fall over, kind of thing. Just try to imagine, Forrest Gump running with braces. That's that scene, if you can think of that movie, except I was a kid. So anyway, I think around 11 or 12, Dr. Salter said, all right, we've had it with the custom built shoes. We've had it with the braces. Just go out and get running shoes. Stop this crazy stuff and we'll see what happens. And I didn't stop falling more, but I would be able to get around easier because I wouldn't have all this hardware on. That was cool. But falling was a problem. Even today, falling is a problem because if I fall, I can't get up. If I'm on the ground and any of you happen to see me, just come and say, are you on the ground intentionally or would you like to get up? And then offer to help me up. When I was a kid, if I saw some money on the ground, I would often, throw myself on the ground to pick up the quarter or the dime or whatever and put it in my pocket and then wait for somebody to come pick me up because, a bag of chips and a pop would be a quarter and, that was a lot of money. When we lived in Stratford at the time, I would be walking around on the streets and in the neighborhood and invariably I would fall and I'd start making a lot of noise. Anybody out there? Anybody around? Hello, come. And the neighbors, some lady, some guy, somebody would come by and pick me up. And normally I would be okay, but sometimes I would fall and I don't want to say damage myself because I never broke anything falling, but I'd be bleeding on the elbows or the wrist or someplace. And that was a great opportunity for the ladies in the neighborhood to take me into their house and clean me all up and bandage me up and give me some cookies and make sure I was okay and send me on my way. And that happened all the time in Stratford, all the time on William Street. If you go to a map on Google and look at the corner of William Street and James Street, that's where we lived. It's kind of right next door. We lived on the corner of William Street, 250 William Street, it's on the corner. And then we moved across the street to 235, which was on the riverside, which is where I had a rowboat, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, so falling was a pretty common behavior. The kids would oftentimes have more of a difficult time getting me up because I was the same size as they were. So a couple of them could haul me up pretty easily, but one kid my own size would have a more difficult time. Wheelchairs, on the other hand, the way I could make wheelchairs go, if you're sitting in a wheelchair and your arms don't do the wheels, like mine didn't, you use your feet. And the problem is that if you're in a wheelchair, it's probably because they've done something to your legs, which is why you're in a wheelchair. But normally you would have one leg available for doing something. And if you've ever been in a wheelchair or imagine being in a regular chair, it's much easier to push yourself backwards on a chair than it is to pull yourself forward on a chair with one leg. It's just way easier. There's something about the way the muscles work. I don't know what it is, but you push yourself backwards way easier. So the way it was in a wheelchair is you would just get in your chair and with whatever leg was reaching the ground, you'd push yourself backwards. And me, I would be the me in the wheelchair. I would push myself backwards. Of course, if anybody was around, they'd push you the other way and you'd be fine and you could go places. And if you're going down a hill, you wouldn't go down a hill backwards because that would be just plain stupid. Because you get up too much speed and you hit the brakes and boom, you'd fall over because your weight, you're hitting the back, you're hitting the brakes, and your weight would just send you right over backwards. So that's how I would get around in a wheelchair. The problem with going backwards on a wheelchair would be coming up to a curb or going down a driveway to go across the street. You'd get into that little curve that's in the road and you come up to the driveway and you try to not get stuck on the driveway, but you get up a little speed and boom, the wheelchair would go over about on its back. And you'd be stuck there, really stuck there. Your feet up in the air. And again, it would be Jimmy starting to yell at people, hey, anybody out there, come and help me. And people would come by and pick the wheelchair up and pull it up on the sidewalk and make sure I was okay, and I'd be on my way. It wasn't until I was much older when I went to a doctor and we figured out that, yeah, your legs are not the same length. So we experimented with different risers on the inside of the shoes and on the outside of the shoes. And we finally ended up with an inch, almost an inch, the right leg shoe on the outside, which really helped a lot with the falling, and it really helped a lot with the walking, and it made life much easier. But it took a long time. It was just in the last couple of years that we sorted that out. But that's a whole other story. There's a whole bunch of other stories, and maybe eventually they'll come. But for now, I think that's all. Hopefully this one worked. See you later.